Big Star 1000 with a new installment of Gimme Ten. Today we will focus on psychedelic pop. This is kind of a four-part video, and I'll explain how this works. I'm going to do two parts on psych pop. Today will be the originals, the pioneers, 1960s, 70's. Next week we'll look at the revivalists from the 90s and beyond. And then I'll segue this with a double video on Baroque pop, which, if you think of Baroque pop and psych pop, there's a lot of crossover. If you take an album like Pet Sounds, for example, it could be featured in both video or either video. And that's why I want to clarify that aspect. The elements of psych pop that cross over with Baroque pop, obviously the very layered music, the hunger for melody, the arrangements, the vocal harmonies, which are, as I said before, are often multi-layered and very lush. Sometimes, yes, it's difficult to distinguish between psychedelic pop and Baroque pop. And some of these records I'm going to show you today could be in both videos easily. So you've got, appetite for the sort of lysergic experience, melding psych rock, pop music, sunshine pop, to come to a sort of very dense and lush mixture of those styles, musical styles. So without further ado, I will start this installment, and I have decided to start with, I think, the granddaddy of all psychedelic pop records, in my opinion, and I'm talking about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. Obviously, no surprise here. I mean, everybody knows, has heard this record before. This happens to be a Canadian copy of the album. Released in 1967. Obviously, it's got one of the most iconic sleeves ever. Now, I was tossing between that and Revolver in this list. I don't want to put two artists that are, two albums from the very same artist. Although I have, you'll see in a minute, I'm broken that rule. But Revolver, as I said, could have been a strong contender in this list. But I think this record, the magnitude and this is a cultural artifact rather than a record. It goes beyond the simple fact of being a piece of wax with music on it. It is it triggered fashion and a cultural revolution when this came out. So to sum it up in this video is not very, but the psych pop elements are very clear. I mean, the George Martin production, the effects that I used, this album pioneered a whole lot of different studio effects, and psychedelic pop really is all about that. Is all about the studio experimentation. It's not music that people would play live very often because it's just too complicated. So that's my first entry in this list, and I'm sure that you've all heard it. I mean, I first heard Sgt. Pepper's when I was about 18 years old, which is late considering, but it had such a magnitude, such an impact on me. I never heard anything that sounded like it, and even now when I play it, it's an amazing record. And I would say close second or equal first is this record, which could be considered easily a Baroque pop record, just like Pet Sounds. But I'm talking about Odyssey and Oracle by the Mighty Zombies. This record is just a phenomenal piece of music from start to finish. It's very lush and it's very psychedelic. And one of the most psychedelic songs on is Time of the Season, which was the big single. It tried to be the big single. We never really did anything. think it was released in America as this single, and it sort of flopped. But it's just such an amazing song, and yeah, this is one of the sort of key moment of psychedelia. But it doesn't really represent the album as such. Zombies, a band from I think St Albans, and in Hertfordshire, and they were fronted by Rod Argent and Colin Blunstone, who I will talk about in the Baroque pop video. This starts with the mighty Care of Self 44, and there's a Rose for Emily and Beechwood Park. I mean, this record is just, I mean, in many ways it's better than Sgt. Pepper's, you know, if you think about the overall quality of the record. But it's probably not as culturally significant, but it's a brilliant record. Actually, the four first records here are English records, and the next four records are American records, and then I've got two other things. I've selected Joy of a Toy as number 3 entry on this list by Kevin Ayers. This is a wonderful, wonderful, quirky psychedelic album which was released in 1970, or 69 rather, by Kevin Ayers, who was one of the key members and original members of the Soft Machine. And this is very off kilter and very whimsical, and just the cover really does embody what's inside. You know, you got songs like the Clarietta Rag, which is just, you know, I mean, bouncy and I mean joyful. Yeah, joyful indeed. Sometimes you're not sure whether he's singing in tune or not, and that adds to the mystique of this record. It's and his deep, gravelly voice, you know, he's like a Leonard Cohen of sorts. Yeah, Lady Rachel, all this crazy gift of time. The last song is excellent too. Kevin Ayers, Joy of a Toy. And the last UK record that I've selected for this Gimme 10 is Butterflies by the Hollies, a group from Manchester, which featured at the time Graham Nash. He was a member of the band, and the band started as a sort of like a beat group, you know, sort of in the Dave Clark 5 style, or the Beatles, the early Beatles style, and was a little bit more aggressive in sound, and this sees them move in the completely different direction, with very lysergic sounding, very psychedelic and mellow record, which is one of the essential pieces of psych pop from the UK. And you know, this is my copy is on World Record Club. It's an Australian pressing on World Record Club. They're not very easy to come by, but this has got Dear Eloise on it, Pegasus, you know, and the title track Butterfly is amazing too. So this is from I'd guess 69 or something, or thereabouts. Some US psych pop, and I was talking about Pet Sounds. I'm not going to include Pet Sounds in this video, but I will include a Beach Boys album. And the next best thing is Surf's Up, and that is a psychedelic pop masterpiece if there ever was one. You can see how floppy this thing is. It's a very thin cover on Stateside. I think an Australian press. Yes, it is too. With Don't Go Near the Water, you know. Feel Flows is just anyway. Great record, absolutely essential, and I feel that you know, we always talk about Pet Sounds, but this record is just superb and very layered, and lots of amazing kind of melodies that come out of, you know, the only thing is student demonstration time. Why the hell did they put student demonstration time on this. It's a bit like with Revolver when Yellow Submarine comes on. I just feel like skipping that song all the time. It's just me. I just find it so irritating. It's such a great record, and then you've got Ringo that appears there. No offense, it just annoys me personally. Anyway, so now here's a pair of albums that were released at the same time, the same month, maybe even the same day for all I know, by the same band, but with different. And you can't believe that these guys could release two different records that were so brilliant and so ahead of their time. You know, the first one is the classic "Begin" by the Millennium. The Millennium were a band from the West Coast, and the whole thing was arranged by two guys, Gary Usher and Kurt Butcher, and this record is just a masterpiece of vocal melodies and super layered, beautiful, lush arrangements, catchy as all get out. I mean, if you don't believe me, listen to Claudia on Thursday, the second song with its sort of reverb drum breaks and sort of slightly Brazilian feel, and you'd have to actually agree. This is a masterpiece. This is an absolute masterpiece, and this came out in August 1968. And to release one masterpiece like this is extraordinary, but to release two of them, also released in August 68, is a present tense by Sagittarius. And this is also a Kurt Butcher and Gary Usher production. Well, you can see. Let's see that there. Right. And features all 7 members of the Millennium, which you see here. Those 7 guys are all here on this record. This is astonishing. The quality of the songwriting, the melodies, the inventiveness of the whole thing is stunning. It's absolutely. I mean, it's a must-listen record, and it could be included in a Baroque pop video for sure, but I think the psychedelic component and the sunshine pop component are stronger than the Baroque elements. In Baroque pop, you've got more orchestration, like strings and that sort of thing. That's how it sort of is different to psych pop. Maybe I'm just riffing here. What am I talking about? I don't even know what I'm talking about. And the last US record that I've chosen to include, I thought there's very few girls there. It's all boys. It's true. You know, you just want some gender balance, so you can't. I mean, but I've got one girl, Margo Guryan. Take a Picture, which is also an album from 1968 from memory. And Margo Guryan, she has a jazz background. She worked with Ornette Coleman, and she worked on other records, and she got the chance eventually to make her own record. She got a budget to make a record, and she made a wonderful album, which is super poppy, very catchy, and yes, very dense with lots of psychedelic instrumentation and the like, and some beautiful oboe and flute on it, and it's just a really lovely record. It's just this is what probably Stereolab's Laetitia Sadier, if you're familiar with Stereolab, what she would have sounded if she were a 1968 singer, she would have sounded like this. It's a beautiful record, Margo Guryan. I got a Brazilian record here, and this Brazilian record is an absolute masterpiece. everybody should own it. Talking about the self-titled Arthur Varekai album. This is just, top notch from start to finish. The opener, Caboclo, will give you a real good sample of what this sounds like, tinged with a sense of melancholy as well as, super joyful kind of music. This guy was an arranger for Gal Costa and for Caetano Veloso and all sorts of people. He came from Rio and he's still alive. And he remastered this record himself. This is the Mr. Bongo reissue, which is the best sounding one of all of them. And this is definitely fitting the psychedelic pop bill. It's a completely, it's a prototype album for the style, the instrumentation, and what he uses all over the record just justify this classification. And finally, I've got an Italian record. And this could be also a psychedelic prog record. What I mean is a progressive pop record. And this is Lucio Battisti with Anima Latina, which means Latin soul in English. And everything about this is slightly psychedelic. The sleeve with the kids and their instruments is not the best sleeve you've ever seen. Really, it's this guy is like a mix between a sort of a Robert Wyatt and Arthur Varekai. He's got this kind of very idiosyncratic way of delivering lyrics, and the opening song is going to give you a good sample. There we go. I'll just put it there so that you can see. These are the many instruments that you can see. That are used on this record. It's a wonderful piece of music. Lucio Battisti, Anima Latina. I'll finish on this, and next week I will talk about modern psych pop. So if you enjoy this, leave me some comments and we'll talk to you. Until next week, VC.